Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone to Ritika's presentation on reusable components in Canvas apps. This is a question I get quite often, so this should be a very interesting session for us. So with further ado, Ritika, I'll hand the presentation over to you, and if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, unmute and ask, and then hopefully we'll also have some time for Q&A in the end. Over to you, Ritika.
Thank you, Inar. Welcome all to Icelandic Power Platform User Group. As Inar mentioned already earlier, I'm Ritika Agrawal, and today I'm going to talk about the reusable components in Canvas apps. Before we start, I want to talk a little bit about myself. So I am a Microsoft MVP and MCP for business applications. I work as a Power Platform consultant, and apart from this, I am the user group leader for Hyderabad Power Apps and Power Automate user group. If you would like to connect with me, you can scan the QR code here for LinkedIn, or you can follow me on Twitter. In case there are any questions after the sessions, I'll try to answer all the questions in the meetup. But still, if there is anything you have and you want to get my opinion on that, you can reach out to me on agrawalritika08@gmail.com. Other than that, I have a personal blog which is agrawalritika.com. Here I like to write about my Power Platform learnings, and if there is anything that can help you, you can definitely check out. So let's start with the session. And before we dive into the Canvas components of Power Platform, let's talk about the app component first. So how does these Canvas apps fit into the Power Platform architecture? Usually when we have a requirement of performing a task, the first thing that comes into mind is it would be nice if I had an app, or if I can use something on my mobile device or on my laptop or desktop device where I can perform that operation. So if you are not already familiar with what Power Apps is or what Canvas Apps is, here is what you can know. So Power Platform, it's a low code, no code platform which allows us to build various end to end solutions. And in that, there is a component which is called as Power Apps. In the Power Apps, we build out various applications that can be used on our mobile phone or on various other devices. What it comes under is the authentication from Office 365. So if I have an account in Office 365, I can have access to creating an applications. Now, if we talk specifically in terms of Canvas apps, it's a kind of application where I can drag and drop controls and create the whole user experience. I can write the logic, whatever I would like to build on my application. Now, when you have so many options available, at times you want to include something like a reusable component, a control or a logic that I'm going to use at maybe 10 different places. I want to create it as a reusable piece. That's where Canvas components comes into picture. So Canvas components are a built-in feature in Canvas apps where you can define your own components. You can share these components with others, so that if you want to have a standardization or a similar theme across various applications, you can build out a component and share it with everybody. Many organizations, they have various departments, and all of them may or may not have their different applications. Maybe some of the apps are for the whole organization, but some of them, they are for a specific team. To maintain a standard user experience across all those apps, you can use Canvas components for it. So here you don't have to write any code for building the component, but using the out of the box controls and your own logic, you can create a reusable piece that you can not just only use multiple times in a single app, but also that component can be used in various applications. We will talk about a little bit about the component libraries as well. So Just to give you a brief overview, it's a central library where you can keep all your components, and your users or other developers, they will have access to those components when they are building their own applications. So this is the Canvas components, something you can create from the out of the box available controls. Now, when I say out of the box, I mean those controls that are available in the Canvas app directly in the editor. I don't have to do anything extra in order to enable those components. All right, so in what cases I would use a Canvas component? First one, we discussed a little bit briefly about having a reusable control that I can place at various places. The second one could be, what if something is not supported out of the box on a Canvas app editor? I want to extend the capabilities of the available controls so that it uh, it aligns with my design and it aligns with my solution. Now I know there is a text input control where the users can come in and enter some data. But what if I want to apply a format there? In that case, I can create a custom component, because on the out of the box control, the only formats I can select from is a text and a number. And in many cases, you may have other requirements, like for a specific identification number, it will be in a format like some characters and then some numbers, etc. Maybe a regex matching. So in any of those cases, when you are not able to complete, or when you're not able to use the out of the box control to create something on your Canvas app, that's where we use Canvas components. And because we are talking about the low code, no code side of development here, there we will go with the Canvas components, something that we create from the out of the box control. There is another one which is PCF controls, but that goes to the code side of Power Platform. I will need to write code in order to create a control that I can use on my app, or like my Canvas apps, my model driven apps, or the portal application. So here we are going to majorly focus on Canvas components. Okay, a few examples of Canvas components. If you see here, the first one is a text input validator. So here, what if I want to verify the input my user is entering, it's a proper email or not? So I can add something like where it matches the regex before it allows my users to enter something else or to submit a specific form. Same here, if you go with the first one, we have various validations for email, password, URL. And the second one, if you see on the screen, it's a alphabet-based slider control where I have a list of all the alphabets displaying, and I can slide through the screen to view certain records on my screen. Let's see these ones in action. We are going to develop a custom component from scratch, but here I have a few components that are already created. This is the slider one I'm talking about. If I go here, I have various sub components enabled as part of it. And now if I want, I can place it on my screen. So I can go to insert, custom, and then I can put my component one, because that is my my Canvas component. Similarly, if I want to create a copy of it, or maybe place it at two different places on the same screen, I can do that. Now, if I play this application right here, I get the ability of selecting a specific alphabet here. And if I go to my second control, I can select a different value. That's the beauty of it. Even though they come from the same component, but they act like individual or separate controls on the screen. I have component 1 and I have component number 2. If I go back, there is one for the regex input as well. I'm going to explain the logic behind these in some time as we go through the basics of Canvas components first. But let's try to place it on the screen. So regex input. Here, I'm going to verify that it's a email. So I'm adding the input format as email. If I play it and I say something else, so it was not a proper email I entered here. So it said invalid email. Now let's try with a valid one. So this is a regex of an email. It's not going to check if the email address actually exists or not, but it verifies the format. Some characters, at the rate, some characters, dot, some characters. That's what every email ID we have, it looks like that only. Similarly, if I want to have something like a URL, so I add URL here and I play it. Let's add some gibberish value. So it says invalid email. If I add a proper email, then it is, but I added a test value here in a proper URL format, and that is accepted. This is something I cannot do with any of the out of the box controls available here. If I go to the insert menu, I have label, I have forms, etc. So many controls are there. But what if I want to include this at 10 different places? Maybe I'm asking somewhere for the person's email, somewhere for a URL like their own website, somewhere from a related person's email, etc. Now, I don't need to write all of this logic again and again, because there is a components tab where we can create our own components. Let's go back here. Now, in terms of customizations, for any control you build using the custom canvas components, there are input and output properties. Input is what your developers, or at the time you're using the component, what you want to pass to that component. So that is an input property. Similarly, if I use, let's say, a text input control, the out of the box control, there I have a default property. What will go in the default property is, when I play the app, what should be the value which is visible on my control. So that is an input property. Default is the input property of my text input control. Similarly, for my canvas components, there can be other properties I want to pass, maybe some color, some text value, or any other format. Then we have outputs. What is returned from that canvas component? Now, if I say for the text input control, default was the input property, but text input dot text is the output property. So text is the output property for my control. Input is what I want to pass to the component, and output is what I want to receive from that canvas component. So if I see here on my first one, we have a few input properties as well. So if I see there is a slider color and there is a hover text background, what does that mean? So if I go here, by default, the value is blue. But if I want to change it to maybe something like this. So this is my own logic I have built, but using the properties, I can control how my component will be displayed. Maybe I am using 10 different apps, and on some of those, I want to place a different color, and on some of those, it would be blue or some other color. So using these custom properties, I can pass the value to the component. And if I go back here on my component itself, I have this small label. Yes. So this slider here, and if I see the color property, okay, just give me a second. I am looking for. So here, if you see, the handle fill is set to the slider color, whatever is passed as the input. So component 1 is the name of my canvas component and the property I would like to extract here. Then if I want to return something from this component, I can define it as a output property. So if you see here, I have returned selected alphabet. What does that mean? If I want to use this to display some information on my screen here, then I can write an expression. So I'll place a label control to show you the output. So here I'll say component 1_1 dot the output property I'm looking for. So selected alphabet. See, this returned M. If I change the value, it is changing the output. Based on my selection, this is changing the values here. So this may be my custom logic. Now I have another component which extends the capabilities of out of the box features. In many apps that you may have built earlier, there could be a requirement of I want to be able to select more than one checkboxes at a time. Now, rather than writing that complex logic every time, you can use this component to control how many options your user can select at once. So let's see this in action first, and then we will explore it. So what I'm going to do is I'll place this multi-select checkbox here. I can reduce its size. And here there is a property also which says whether I want to show them vertically or horizontally. Currently it is vertical is set to false, so it was displaying horizontally. But as soon as I turn this on, here I can see that the checkbox is now visible vertically. Now, this is something where I can use this on both the applications I'm creating for a mobile device or from a tablet view, because design is something you are controlling. Having this flexibility of whether I want horizontal options or I want vertical options is a nice add-on. And if I play it, I can select this, and if I select 3, that removes my selection for option number 1. If I select option 1 again, that removes my selection for option number 2. If I change this value to 1, then I can only 1, 1. This is also a custom component which is created using the out-of-the-box controls of a Canvas app. Now let's see how we can create one using the Canvas components. So for that, I'll go to the components tab here, click on plus new component. That will add my new control here. So let's say I want to name this as input or maybe number input. Let's do that. I misspelled it, so let me fix it. Yeah, number input. Now we are going to use out of the box controls, input properties, output properties, and then we will see how this works. So what I'm going to do here is, because the idea for this control is I want to have a number input here where the person can enter a number, and using the arrow, the above arrow, I increase the value, and using the down arrow, I want to decrease the value. Okay, so let's add a input first and see. I am only going to use the out of the box controls available in the Canvas app editor. So let's go with the text input control. And here I'm going to say the format is number. Then I will configure the position properties. So what I want is when I adjust the height and width of my control, it should automatically adjust the text input. If I don't do that, let's see what happens. So let's say I created this control and now I want to add it on my screen. So if I go back to my screen, let's move this here, and I select text input, it's not adjusting. Maybe I just want this much text input, but because it has a fixed position values, it's not automatically adjusting or being responsive here. what we need to do in such scenarios is, on the basis of component, we will set this value. So let's say the x coordinate is going to be 0, the y coordinate is also going to be 0. So it sticks at the top left corner. Then I'll select the control again and I'll go to width property. Here I'll say number input. This is my canvas component. So number input dot width. Now, whatever is the width of my text input control, canvas component, it will be the width of my text input control. And same goes with the property for height. So let's say number input dot height. Now, if I go back to my screen here, whatever control value I select, my canvas component is adjusting on the basis of it. So this is how, when you're defining custom components or your canvas components, this is something that you should keep in mind before even starting to work on the logic, because here this is important, because if I want to create this as a reusable piece, it should be adjustable on the basis of control size. All right. Now I don't need the whole width of it because I want to place the arrows. So I'll say make it 90%. So by 0.9, or maybe I can do 0.8, so that we have enough space here. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, so it looks like a proper control, I'm going to set the width to 150. So the default width is 150. This is first control we added. Now let's add the arrows. So we have icons for it. I have an up arrow. I'll move it here. And I'll have a down arrow. Same customizations we will do for these two also in terms of position, because this was 80%. Let's make these two 20%. So the width is number input dot width into 20%, sorry, 0.2. So now we have the proper width, and its x coordinate is going to be dependent on my text input 1. So text input 1 dot width. So it comes just next to it. Then the height is by 2 of my number input control. So number input dot height by 2. So here, based on the height of the control, it will be half on the screen. For this one, the y is going to be 0. For this one, the y is going to be just next to the above icon. So I can say icon 1 dot height. So now this is properly visible. Which is automatically adjusting. Whatever is the height or width of my control, my arrows are adjusting on the screen appropriately because I have added the positions properly. Now, this is something I personally like when I'm building any canvas components, so that it is adjustable with the view. But again, on your requirements, you can choose how you want to place the controls on the screen. Okay, now let's do one more thing. We will add properties. If I want to add a property, I'll select the canvas component, and from here, I'll select plus new custom property. We can give this a name. So let's say default value. The name that will be visible to my developers will be default value. And then I can provide a description. Add the default value for my canvas component. And if you remember, there were two input and output properties. So we are making this as input. Now for the data type, these are the various data types which are supported. So maybe I can use a text here or a number, because this is a number input. I can say the default value is a number. Then create. And I check this property so that if someone changes the default raise on reset when the value changes, so that if I change the value, my control is reset. Okay. Now let's do one more for the color property. So arrow color. Add the color for the arrows. And this is also input, but of type color. And same this one. Now let's say I want this to be black. Already the RGBA for black color is mentioned here. So we can directly go in. I'll select both the icons again, go to the color property and say number input dot arrow color. So now whatever value I add, it will be added to my controls. Okay, let's work on the logic here. Our user experience is ready. If I change this to maybe, this orange color, that is changed. So now I can make this work with any theme, with any color that I want to implement. All right, let's go back to the components and let's work on the logic. So when the control is reset, I want to set the values. Now, there is a concept of variables in Canvas apps. If you're already familiar with it, then it's fine. But for those who are not familiar with the variables in a Canvas app, this is a local value that you would like to save when you are running your application. So I'll say set. This is the syntax for setting a variable. Then my variable name. So we'll call it as var default. Then I will say the default value is the value that is coming from my input property. So number input dot default value. And this is the value I want to show on my control. So we made it a number, and then for the default value, it is my var default. Okay. Then when I click on this up arrow, I want to increase the value. So we will select the onSelect property and we will say set var default as var default plus 1. So increase it by 1. Even if I want to change something like here, this 1 should come from the control itself. Maybe at some places I want to increase by 2 or 3, then I can variabilize it. But here I'm keeping it as a hard-coded value. And when I click on the bottom or the down arrow, I should decrease the value. So here instead of +1, I want -1. All right. Then let's return the output. So for that, we can create again a custom property, output, and output for number. And this is output, and the data type is number, and create. What do I want to return in this output? I'll select the property, and then here I want to return my default variable. Let's go back to the screen and see. For the default value, I want 1000. So see, 1000 is entered here. And currently this is editable, but I can make it disabled. So here, the display mode is disabled. If I come back here to my screen now, and let me zoom a little bit. If I click on the above arrow, it is increasing that number. If I click on the bottom arrow, it's decreasing that number. That's what we wanted, right? So here, with the help of this canvas component, I was able to add a control that I can place at various different occurrences, and then I can customize it the way I want. If I want to add more properties to it, maybe like the color or the size or the font of this value which is showing, because maybe in your app you're using a different font than what is configured in the component. So those things can be configured in your canvas component. So if you see, I have the value changing. Let's extract its output. So no, not the button control. What I want to do is I'll add a label, and let's zoom out. So here Let me place it like this. So let's do a sum of these two. So I'll add a text here, sum, and then the value which is coming from component 1_1, no, not this, number input. Number input _1, this is my first one dot output, and I want to add it with the number input _2 dot output. Now, in case you have complex expressions, you can also use brackets to customize this, or to make sure that whatever logic is running, it's running in the right order. So here, if you see, 990 plus 109 is equals to 1099. Not only I can create a control, but I can use its output to perform other manipulations on my Canvas app. Now, if I go back to the components here, I have several controls. This is the icon, this is an icon, and this is the text input. Let's see the other ones. Multi-select checkbox. So here I have a vertical gallery and a horizontal gallery. Why do we have these two in the checkbox control? The reason is because we have that property, is vertical or no. If I click on this vertical gallery and I click on visible, it is only visible when I have selected the control or the property as true. And it will be visible when it is false. So when it's vertical, it will show the vertical control. When it's horizontal, it will show the horizontal control. Then if I go to my regex input here on the label, this is the error message we are seeing, but the actual text input is different. And here we have an expression, sorry, on this one, the text input, because this is the one which is changing. Because it is matching regex, here we are using Canvas apps formulas, basically Power FX, to match if the input is in a specific format. And how do we know which format? If you see, this is the input property. So if in the input property we have decimal, then match it against this regex. If it's a URL, match it against this regex. If it's an email, match it against this value. And for the password, it has, I think, a validation where you require capital letters, small letters, some special characters, numbers, etc. So something like this, you can also include into your applications to add your own customizations. If I go to the first one, here we have a label control. And if you see, this has a text value for all the alphabets. There is no such control which allows me to drag on this directly and then see the value. But with the help of logic, it has been created. So the label is what is coming in this black color and showing me the alphabet. If I go on its visible property, this has value visibility. It's a variable. So how it is set? If I click on the slider control, and if you see, on selecting, this is true. So when I select the slider, this becomes visible. When I change the value, so let's say I went to E and changed it, that sets it to false. So there is no hover property which is allowing me to do something like this, but using the control, I can place the controls on the screen which are hovered or which are visible when I am actually selecting a control. Now, if you see, there is another gallery which has the alphabets. So basically, on the basis of my selection, I can return an output here. So these are different kinds of controls you can create using Canvas component. Now, again, it's up to you what idea you have and how you want to build the Canvas components against your requirements. But there are many resources which can help you. So before we move on to the samples library, here is what you should know. When you're working for an organization and when you have various applications that you would like to build, if you are using Canvas components directly inside a single application, that means it will stay on that app only. If I want to move the components from one place to another or from one app to another, I will have to do a manual migration. And in case there are any updates, it will not be updated directly. That's where component library comes into picture. So if I go back to my maker experience, here you have a tab for component libraries. It's currently in preview, but you can create a library from here. So let's call it as my components library and create. Okay, so here is the component library. If I go back to the components, this is where I can add my own components. So let's add a very simple one. We will call it as text format. Okay, let's do test components. All right. So I'll add a label here just because I want to show you the component library, how it looks. So we have the text property and I'll add a input property here. So let's go with the text value and create. This is going to include the text property. Text components dot text value. All right. So now this is a component library. I'll save it. Okay, if I go again to the maker experience, I should see that available in my component libraries. So first I'll switch to the right environment and then apps and the component libraries. This is where my library is. Now, if I want to use these controls, which are published to the component library, I don't need to do manual import or export. What I can do is I can go to this plus new menu and then get more components. There is a hyperlink on the bottom which says get more components. When I click on it, I see my component library, which is just published. So I can include that test component here on my app. And once it is added, I can go to library components and add it to my screen here. So there is a text. Now I did not make much customizations to this component, but the basic one we should see, which is to change the text value. So let's say this is a text. So now I have the value updated here. With the help of library components, now if there is anything I want to change on the component, I can change that directly in my library because this is referenced from the library. I do not need to make changes here. I make the changes there. What I need to do is come back to the app and then refresh the component. After that, the control will be refreshed and you will see the latest version here. This way, without managing the components individually in your application like this, you can publish them to the component library and then you can use it. Other ways, if you don't want to use the component library, you can import the components or export the components individually. So they will download the zip file for you and you can use that zip file to import the components into another application. Okay, now where can we find various samples for the Power Apps Canvas components? So there is a forum which is available for the Power Platform where you can find various components that are built by the community. If you have a component that you would like to submit, then you can also do that. So here, to go to the samples library, you can go to this URL, which is canvas app powerusers.microsoft.com/t5/canvas apps component samples, and that's where you will see the various components. Let's open this in one of our browser windows. Okay, maybe I should go to the forum and then so community. So these are basically the community forums for Power Platform. If you have any questions, you can also post your questions here, and they will be answered by many community experts. So if there is anything that you would like to get more information on, this is also one of the places. So here we will look for the Canvas app samples. So I think this one, Canvas apps component samples. Okay, so this is the place where you can find plenty of Canvas components. If there is anything which exists out of the box, you can use it. Otherwise, if there is anything you would like to build custom of your own, you can build it yourself. And if you would like to share that with the community as well, you can publish those Canvas components here. So this is a central repository that you can refer to if if there is anything which is not supported out of the box on your Canvas app editors. Okay, so with that is what I had in the session for today. Talk about the various kinds of components which are supported in the Canvas app editor, where you can use Canvas components to create the control that you would like. It can be a reusable piece, and it can also be used to extend the capabilities of out of the box controls. So thank you so much. And Inar, if we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And this is a really good example of how to use and create components. So there are no questions in the chat at the moment. So if anybody has questions, you can unmute or type them in the chat. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to make use of components and make that basically your default way of thinking. Because if this speeds up everything. It takes maybe a little bit of time to get into the way of thinking, creating components, but after some time, you are chunking out apps with very sophisticated controls without having to do much. And like, yeah, Ritika mentioned, you can evolve your library after the components and refresh them, etc., etc. So this is something that has been evolving, and as you can see, the component library is in preview, but I seriously doubt that Microsoft is going to walk that one back. Yeah, really good session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. And in any case, if there are no questions at this point, you can reach out to me anytime and I'll be happy to answer those.
Excellent. Yeah, I encourage you all to check the link I pasted in the chat for the component samples, and then just look up other people in the community, see what they are doing. That's one of the best ways to learn.
Definitely.
And with that, I thank you all that attended, and I say happy app making.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.